Okay, we're on Daf Pei Beis, Amud Aleph. And the subject is going to be, the first mission is going to be about chinuch, that fasting, as we saw earlier, that you don't make children fast. Here it's going to talk about chinuch. Also spoke about Mechitza Sicha, that said over there also that there's no chinuch of that, only Nilos Asando. Over there it said that they don't need dafka shoes, so you do chinuch once they're igil chinuch, and there's but as Mechitza Sicha says over there that they didn't make the gzera. The poskim, I forgot to mention over there, the poskim say that nowadays we don't consider Mechitza and Sicha so necessary for child development, so they say not to do that either. And here is going to be the sugya about eating. So the Mishnah says that no kosein ran no sab yom kippurim, aval machan chanosan lefnei shan lefnei shnasayim. Which feels you were gil mitzvah. So it starts off saying that you don't afflict them, but you do educate them, which means it seems to contradict a little bit. It says you don't, and then it says you do. It says it would seem in the Mishnah. I made to make it big. I didn't realize that I could make it bigger over here. So if it says that ein man and no son means don't afflict them, it would sound like anything at all. But the Gemara goes on, so the Gemara is going to say, the Rashi explains that mechan chnosan you do make chinuch l'sha'os. L'sha'os means that they fast a couple of hours. It's of course it's going to be a little bit more than the regular time. The Gemara is going to say that you push off the regular time of breakfast. Here it's pushing off breakfast, but not just by an hour. It's going to be, but they didn't eat already from nightfall already, so it's already in many hours. But they don't eat the whole night, and also in the morning they shouldn't eat until a little bit later than they would usually eat breakfast. So even though it says you don't afflict them, that means it seems the Pashto on the Mishnah would mean you don't have a full day fast, but they do have a temporary fast, a partial fast, and it says l'fnei shana l'fnei shnasayim. The simple words we would think it means a year or two before bar mitzvah, but I'll just say Rashi, and this seems from the Gemara, it's a little bit complicated. I didn't have any chance to make any kind of chart, but I hope that it'll go through well. The word lefnei, it doesn't say yimachanech them a year or two. It says before a year, before two. So Rashi says that the Gemara is going to assume when it says before a year, it doesn't mean a year before. It means before a year. That means as if to say when it says before a year, it's really saying 2 years. And lefnei shnasayim would mean 2 years before lefnei shnasayim. So it means 3 years. And as if it would say not a year or two before, as if it would say 2 or 3 years before. In order to get them used to doing mitzvahs, to become regular in mitzvahs, regular. And that's how the Mishnah would be presented, that you don't make them fast the whole day, but you do make a few hour fast 2 or 3 years before bar mitzvah. Okay?
Excuse me, Rebbe.
Yes, please.
According to the first Rashi, in terms of the not being chayiv to prevent them from eating, would that mean that you shouldn't give them to eat? But Rashi if they do take to eat, then you shouldn't prevent them from eating. Or nice just prevent doesn't mean that.
Very nice. Rashi says the Eiman means that you're not chayiv. You don't have to
stop them, right?
You don't make them. You're not chayiv to afflict them. But which would be mashma, like Lev Yaakov was saying, that you may, or they may. You don't need it. But the Rambam says that you don't let them fast.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The Rambam brings down that the Rambam says that it doesn't mean that you're not obligated to afflict them. You're not allowed to afflict them. It means you have to make sure that they don't fast, because it's
I see.
So the Rashi would be mashma the way you said, but the Rambam says differently, and it seems that we pass like the Rambam that they're not supposed to fast. The kids like to fast for some reason, or maybe they feel big, but they're not supposed to. And also, even we're going to see it soon. There is a point of maybe fasting a whole day midrabanan. There is a chinuch. We'll see there is such a thing as fasting right before bar mitzvah. We'll see what the shiramar. But they say it's only for Yom Kippur. It's not going to be for other fasts. Other fasts, there's no chinuch to fast before bar mitzvah, and maybe they're not even supposed to because we don't want to make them weak. Okay, back to the Gemara. So far we have the Mishnah. And the obvious question is, why does it say lefnei shnasayim? If you're going to say before 2 years, whatever that means, 3 years, but the bigger share, say then kal v'chomer the smaller share. So why does it have to say before a year, before 2 years? If it says even before 2 years, you do chinuch, so surely before 1 year. It's talking about two different children. If he's a healthy boy, so then or a girl, so then 2 years before. And if he's a cholah, then 1 year, then before 1 year. So it says a year or two because it's talking about two different kinds of children. If he's a strong build physically, so then he could take the affliction of pushing off breakfast even 2 years before 2 years. If not, then at least before 1 year. New Gemara starts. Amar Rav Huna. Now, just to get a little preview of what the Gemara is going to talk about, is Rav Huna and Rav Nachman and Rav Yochanan. Rav Huna and Rav Nachman are the same shita, according to our Girsa, Rashi, and I think the way we paskin. Okay, leave out the paskin. But Rav Huna and Rav Nachman are going to be the same opinion. Rav Yochanan is going to be a different opinion. And just to say before, a preview what they're going to talk about, Rav Huna and Rav Nachman say that there are two, forget about the Mishnah for this point, how to fit into the Mishnah, that's going to be the Gemara's issue, how to fit into the Mishnah. But Rav Huna and Rav Nachman say that 2 years before adulthood, no, I'm sorry, 4 years. 4 years before adulthood, the child starts fasting. Call it what do you call it? L'shos. It means a few hours. A partial fast. A partial fast 4 years before bar mitzvah. So let's say a boy. So his bar mitzvah at 13. So 9 and 10. A 9-year-old boy in Kippur of 9-year-old and 10-year-old, he's going to fast a couple of hours, and 11 and 12 will be a full day fast. Midrabanan. We said in the Mishnah, it sounded in the Mishnah like there's no full day fast, but they say not like that, and we'll see how it fits into the Mishnah. And they hold that there is a full day fast also Midrabanan.
And a girl a year before.
And the girl is going to, and one talks about a boy, one talks about a girl. And by a girl, it's going to be before, also the same thing, 4 years before Bas Mitzvah from an 8-year-old. 8-year-old and 9-year-old is going to be already partial fast. And 8 and 9, 10 and 11 will be a full day fast, and then once they're Bar Mitzvah, Bas Mitzvah, then there's a full day fast, the rice. And the Rebbe is going to say there's no such thing as a full day fast with Rabbanan. There's no such thing as a full day fast with Rabbanan. They don't fast at all a full day until the Bar Mitzvah or Bas Mitzvah. And he's going to say that the Chinuch is going to be only a partial fast for whatever the Mishnah talks about 1 or 2 years. That's machlokes. So we see it inside. Rav Huna, if you look at Rav Huna, the last word that he says is betinokes, that's a girl. And by Rav Nachman, the last word he says is betino, and that's a boy. So both of them are saying the same thing, the same shita. One's talking about a girl, one's talking about a boy. I'm Rav Huna. Ben ches ben tes mechan chnos in the shows. Ben yud ben yudal masham mashlimin b'rabbanan. Ben yud beis mashlimin b'deraisa. All this is betinokes. It says ben. It should have said bas, because that's all, petinokas. But that's what it means. So it means an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old, and what we call after the 8th birthday, what we call 8-year-old. We call 8-year-old after the 8th birthday. Sometimes it gets confusing in the Gemara and in the postscript, because sometimes they mean in the 8th year and the 9th year, which means that they just started it. But we'll read it the way Ben Ches Ben Tes means an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old. Shows temporary partial fast. Ben Yud Ben Yudal Mashlimin B'Rabbanan, a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old, they have a full day fast with Rabbanan. Ben Yud Beis Mashlimin B'Deraisa, and a 12-year-old has to pay a full day fast with Deraisa, and all this is B'Tinokas by a girl. A girl, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, a temporary fast, partial fast. 10-year-old, 11-year-old is a full fast with Rabbanan, and Yud Beis, a 12-year-old, she's already an adult, so she has to fast with Deraisa. The whole thing about why did it say Ben Ches Ben Tes by 8 and 9? They should have said 8. 8-year-old, right? That's a very pashut. But it means, like we said before, a line ago, we said that by difference between a chola and a bari. So when we say Ben Ches Ben Tes, we mean that if she's a healthy girl, so from 8-year-old. If she's not, then 8-year-old should not fast even partially, only at 9. And 10, 11. So again, that the healthy girl will have a full day fast with Rabbanan at a 10-year-old. But if she's not so strong, so then 11-year-old. And 12-year-old, everybody has to fast, even if she's weak. She's not as constipacious. She's a weak composition, but that's not a reason not to fast on the Raisa. So she has to fast that as 12-year-old. But Nachman is the same thing, same idea. 4 years before, 2 years before, and also the chiluk between a chol and a bari. But he's talking about a boy. So the same thing. So he says, Ben Tes Ben Yud Mechan Chnos on the shows. A 9-year-old boy, 10-year-old boy, depending if he's strong or weak. So then he has a partial fast. Ben Yud Ben Yud Beis Mashlimin B'Rabbanan. 11-year-old, 12-year-old, he has to have a full day fast with Rabbanan. Again, if he's strong from 11, if he's not so strong from 12. And Ben Yud Gimel Mashlimin B'Deraisa. If he's a 13, it's Bar Mitzvah. Then he has to fast with the Deraisa the whole day. That's all talking about a boy. So if one of Nachman are the same opinion, one's talking about a girl, one's talking about a boy, what's the yisod of their opinion? That there is such a thing as a shloma midrabanan, there's such a thing as a full day fast midrabanan, 2 years, if they could take it, 2 years, if not, then only 1 year. And there's also 2 years before that, that's going to be a partial fast. So if they're strong, 2 and 2, 2 years before, and if not, then you start everything a year later. The fast, the whole day fast will only be 1 year, and 2 years before that will be the partial fast. That's all. Rav Nachman. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Shlama Midrabanan. Like there's no such thing as a full day fast Midrabanan. They didn't obligate a full day fast. There's only a partial fast, and therefore Ben Yud Aleph, Ben Yud Aleph. Mechan Chanosa L'Shos, Ben Yud Beis Mashlimim D'Oraisa. He's talking about he says an example of a girl. He could have said by a boy also, but he's talking about a girl, and he says therefore that the 12-year-old is going to say a full day fast with the Raisa. She's already 12 years old, and before it there's 1 to 2 years of chinuch, which is going to mean a partial fast. He only has a partial fast. He doesn't have a full day fast. So if she's strong, so it'll be from 10 to 2 years. She'll have a partial fast. If not, then 1 year before Bas Mitzvah she'll have a partial fast. That's the machlokas.
Rabbi,
Yes, please.
did you happen to see the first Tosfos Yishanim, or are you avoiding it for a reason?
I just want to say to Gemara, if it's okay, I'm confused enough. I'd like us to get it straight one simple way. So far, I'm holding on to Rashi. The Gemara continues. The Gemara was to be derived from the Mishnah now. Tanan, top line on the screen. Tanan, Atinokos, Ein Man, the Nosan, the Yom Kippurim of Mechan L'Fnei Shana L'Fnei Shana San. So this is our Mishnah. And the Gemara sees our Mishnah that Rav Huna and Rav Nachman fit, and Rav Yochanan doesn't fit. So I'm saying Rashi, and how do they fit into the Mishnah? What do they hold again? That there's 4 years before Bas Mitzvah, before Bar Mitzvah, before adulthood is a partial fast, if it's a strong child, and if not, start a year later. And as far as a full day fast with Rabbanan, that's going to be 2 years before, if not only 1 year. And the Gemara thinks that they fit into the Mishnah. What does it say? So as Rashi told us in the Mishnah already, that the word doesn't say a year or two. It says before a year, before 2. So we're taking it to mean Lefnei Shana means 2 years before adulthood. And Lefnei Shtayim means 3 years before adulthood. So where do you get something about 2 and 3 years before? Who could explain the Mishnah something about 2 and 3 years? So Rashi says, so Gemara says, Bishlam Rav Huna Rav Nachman Lefnei Shana. The Lefnei Shtayim means Lefnei Shana L'Divreyen, and Lefnei Shtayim. So here the Gersa should be not L'Divreyen, but Rashi and the Kisvayah, they say that, and the Bach points out that it should be L'Divrei Torah. This word we're changing to L'Divrei Torah. If we look at the Bach, if we can get the Bach over here, Rashi also has it, but here's the Bach. There it is. You see that Lefnei Shana L'Divreyen, Lefnei Shtayim L'Divrei Torah. So we're going with that Gersa. Rashi also has that Gersa, and I saw that the Sofrim says that Gersa is in the manuscripts also. So what's the point going to be? They're all saying the same thing. It's a different pshat. We didn't say this pshat yet. Before we said about Chola and Bori, we're saying a different pshat now. That the Mishnah is saying that there's going to be we're talking about a Chola only. Let's talk about a Chola. And we're not talking about 2 different dates. We're talking about the same date, but we're describing it with 2 different descriptions. We're saying 3 years before adulthood. But the reason why we say Lefnei Shana, Lefnei Shtayim, Lefnei Shana means 2 years, right? We say Lefnei Shana. Shana is a year before, and then Lefnei is even before that. Lefnei Shtayim means before the 2 years, means 3 years before. So which age is both 2 years and 3 years? So he says it's 3 years before the Oraisa, which, let's say by a boy, let's say if he's 13. So then when he's 10, he's going to start fasting. A chola, according to what do they say about a boy, let's say? They said 9 and 10 means if he's healthy, start from 9. If he's not healthy, if he's weak, start from 10. And he starts fasting a temporary fast, a partial fast. It's called 2 years before and 3 years before. Why is it 2 years before and 3 years before? It's 2 years before the Ashlama Midrabanan. It's 3 years before the Ashlama D'Oraisa. It's 2 years before he's going to start fasting a full day fast with Rabbanan, because when he's going to be 12 years old, he's going to start a full day fast with Rabbanan. It happens to be 3 years. When he's 10 years old, it's 3 years before his D'Oraisa fast. So we're saying 1 point. We're saying one. We're trying to pinpoint a certain age, and we call it 2 years, which is 3 years. Why is that? Because it's 2 years before his full day fast with the Rabbanan, which happens to be also 3 years before his full day fast with the Raisa. And the Gemara thinks that would fit into the Mishnah. Elo Rabbi Yochanan kasha, but Rabbi Yochanan has no such pshat because he doesn't have any 2 and 3 years. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't have any 3 years. He says no such thing as a shlama midrabanan. There's no such thing as a full day fast midrabanan. So he only has a year. Like he says, what did Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan goes back up a little bit. Rabbi Yochanan said that by a girl, let's say someone a girl, so he says there's 2 years before, 1 year before. It will be, he says there, when she's 10 years old, if she's healthy, or when she's 11 years old, if she's not strong, so then they have a partial fast. And then when she's 12, she starts a full day fast. By boy, he would start 11 and 12, and then by 13, he would start fasting. So there's no such case of a 3 years. The Mishnah says something about Lefnei Shtayim. That's the main point of the Gemara's Kasha. When it says Lefnei Shtayim, it means before 2 years, which means 3 years before. And Rabbi Yochanan doesn't have such a thing. It doesn't exist according to Rabbi Yochanan. That's the Gemara's Kasha according to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, because he doesn't have such a kind of a date that's 3 years before. Also, even though we started the Mishnah, we started the Gemara, we said one chola and one bari. Rabbi Yochanan can't say that either because he doesn't have such a case of 3 years before. He doesn't have such doesn't exist according to him. According to Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, we could talk about 3 years before. They even have a 4 year before. Even if someone is healthy, then it's not 4 years starting a partial fast. But the Mishnah is talking about a chola only, and the Mishnah will read. You could identify it as 2 years before fasting. You can identify it as 3 years before fasting, a full day fast. But you have a pshat. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no pshat at all. So Rabbi Yochanan now says that I think the Pashut Pshat everybody would have said right away in the Mishnah that it doesn't mean Lefnei Shana doesn't mean before the year, and Lefnei Shana doesn't mean before 2 years. Lefnei Shana means a year before, and Lefnei Shana means 2 years before. And it means Rabbi Yochanan thinks the Mishnah also could be read Pashut that it means a year or two before, and one is a chola, one is a bari, and everything's very simple. Tashma. Now the Gemara has a brisa which it thinks is going to be a support to Rabbi Yochanan. Let's try to get it smaller here. We can get it on the screen. No, a little bit more. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. Tashma. The Tanya Rabbi Shmuel, you know, because they know some Yom Kippur, Machan Chanosan, Shano Shtayim, some of the Perkam, beautiful. This Mamash Rabbi It doesn't say the word Lefnei Shana. It doesn't say Lefnei, where is it? Here. It doesn't say Lefnei Shana, Lefnei Shtayim. It says Shano Shtayim. Shano Mamash Rabbi said that Yemachana Chachar, you don't make him fast at all. Ein Ma'amin Osan, you don't make him fast a full day fast at all. And you just do a partial fast, a year or two. What does it mean? A year or two, which before they become Bar Mitzvah. If he's strong 2 years before, if he's not so strong, so 1 year before, and it's only a partial fast.
Excuse me. So Pirkan means like the parak of being an adult. Is that how
Pirkan is adult. Yeah, Pirkan is adulthood, and some of the Pirkan means before adulthood. So a year or two before adulthood. And that's like, I think that would be the simple shot. I think that's how everybody would have read the Mishnah, but the Gemara didn't think so. The Gemara said the whole time, Lefnei Shana, Lefnei Shtayim. And the Gemara had this whole shot, and we had a Rav Huna of Nachman, and they think that they have the Pshat in the Mishnah also. The Gemara even thought that they're better Pshat. The Gemara's Matchik can say, when it says Lefnei Shana, it doesn't mean that, it means Shana. But not the Gemara's advice, that doesn't say Lefnei Shana. So it means that you have a year or two of a partial fast before adulthood. So now again, this brisa is like a Yochanan. How are they going to beat this brisa? Nachman will tell you that this brisa is talking about a full day fast. It means it's not telling you when you start a partial fast. It's telling you when you start a full day fast, because they hold that there is a Shlama and Rabbanan. They hold that there is a full day fast with Rabbanan, and if he's healthy 2 years before adulthood, if he's not strong, so then 1 year before adulthood. So they also come on the brisa. They also agree to such a case of a 1 and a 2. They don't always say that it's going to be a 3 and a 4. They say that they also agree that to say a full day fast, it's a year or two before adulthood. But they're more surprised that the word chinuch would mean a full day fast. Omi kari lechinuch hashlama. Is hashlama going to be called chinuch? When the Mishnah says mechanchen, you're going to say mechanchen, educating means to have a full day fast. The more than think so. The more thought mechanchen means you're just getting him into it, which means a partial fast. But Tanya, Ezo Chinuch, what is the chinuch that you do in order to get the child to fast? If he usually eats breakfast 2 hours in the day, so then you feed him in the third hour. But whenever he eats breakfast, he should eat breakfast an hour later. So you see, that's called chinuch. And you're saying chinuch over here means a full day fast. They're both called chinuch. You could call chinuch a partial fast. You could call chinuch also a full day fast. And that's how they learn the Mishnah. So that's the end of the sugya. And just to sum it up now. Machlokes remains that Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, the Gemara didn't prove anybody. Everybody was able to answer the Mishnah at the last verse, so there's no proof to anybody. The Machlokes remains that according to Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, there's a shlama midrabanan. There's 2 years. Whatever we talk about, there's a chol that starts later if he's not strong. But a strong boy, a strong girl would have started 2 years before adulthood to have a partial fast, and then 2 years before adulthood to have a full day fast. And the Rebbe says no such thing as a full day fast. Just a strong child will start 2 years before for a partial fast, and if not, then that's 1 year before. As far as the halacha goes, we do paskin like Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, that is, we start 4 years before. You start a partial fast 4 years before bar mitzvah. There's one interesting thing that even though according to our gears and what we learned, it comes out that a girl is machmir 1 year before. The girl's going to start getting educated the year before because she becomes an adult the year before. But there's a different sheet over here. The Rif has different gersa, and according to that, there's no difference between a boy and a girl. Even though the girl is going to become mechuyev and mitzvah, she'll become adult the year before, but you don't have to start mechanech before. I mean, you're not going to start from an 8-year-old. 8-year-old, nobody fasts, not even a girl. But a 9-year-old starts the chinuch. A boy will have 4 years of education. The girl will training. The girl will have only 3 years of training till she has to fast. Then the question is, do we paskin about a shlama? That's as far as when you start doing a partial fast. Is there a shlama? Yochanan says there's no shlama. Yochanan says no thing is a full day fast. Some paskin like a Yochanan, and there's going to be, we'll call it 4 years of partial fast, and there's no such thing as a shlama. Some do paskin like a Hunan of Nachman that if they should do a full fast before bar mitzvah, a year or two, and the Shulchan Aruch says. Like that the child should do like a Hunan of Nachman, that to fast a full day fast a year, if they're strong 2 years before, if not then only 1 year before the bar mitzvah. Call it we're not differentiating between a girl and a boy, so it means from what are we going to say, a 12-year-old. A 12-year-old is by girl, she has to fast with the Raisa, but a 12-year-old boy, if he's even if he's weak, he should try to do a whole day fast. And if he's strong, then even 11-year-old. Somebody, yes. Only Yom Kippur. And on Tisha B'Av, on these days, there's no chinuch on Rabbanan fast. Only Yom Kippur. So
Rabbi,
yes.
I'm just realizing that this is shaykh to Rav Emanuel, who has twins, boy and a girl. So in terms of their starting to the hinuch of fasting on Yom Kippur for a number of hours, it'll be this. They can do it at the same age.
Right. Even though according to our Gersa, the girl will start a year earlier, we don't pass like that. We pass like the Grif, that a girl doesn't get more chinuch, doesn't have to start earlier. A nice point. And as far as Ashlama, the Shulchan Aruch says that like Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, that there should be Ashlama a year or two before adulthood, and not after a girl earlier, but we'll call it that from 11-year-old. The 11-year-old should try to fast the whole day, both a boy and a girl. And the Ramah says that if the child is weak, so then you don't have to be machmir at all to have a full day fast. And the Rebbe Allah brings down that some pasuk like Rabbi Yochanan, even not only if the child is weak, that there's no such thing as a shlama midrabanan. Those are the shittas again. I'll just try to say one more time that children, I'll try to make it easier after that whole thing, that 9-year-old does start fasting partially. No difference a boy and a girl. 9-year-old should start fasting a couple of hours. Like it says in the Gemara, push off breakfast an hour later than they usually eat. They usually eat 8 o'clock, so eat 9 o'clock. And as far as a full day fast, so the Shulchan Aruch would say from a 11-year-old should fast the whole day. Of course, all these things, if they can't, they can't. If you see that they're fainting, of course not. But an adult also. But a child should fast, from 11-year-old should fast the whole day. The Ramah says if the child is weak, if it be someone on the post game that passed like a Yochanan, that there's no such thing as fasting the whole day. So there must be partial fasting from 9-year-old until they're adult. And the Rebbe Allah also brings down an opinion that not only for a child, weak child, even we pass like a Yochanan, that there's no full day fast for a child.
Rebbe,
Yes, please.
this is an Iker Makor in Shas, and it's very short, so I feel compelled to say it. In Tosfos Yeshanim, he asks, first of all, that is Mavayir, that the Chiyuv Chinuk is for the Bas is on the Av and nobody else. But he asks from Nazir, over there you see there's only a Chinuk on a Ben and not a Bas. So he says that's by Nazir. But by everything else, Avade, there's a Chiyuv on a Bas. And then the last thing he's Mavayir, which is very important, is there's a kasha you could ask here. What about, we know also that you're not chayiv to be mafrish a cotton from an isser. So he's mavayir that the chiyuv of the inisam es nafshoseyam on Yom Kippur is a chiyuv of chinuk and has nothing to do with being mafrish from isser, even though b'poil, that's what you're actually doing. And this is one of the only makaros and shas for these dinim.
I'll have to hear it again. I didn't get it well enough.
First, Tosfos Yeshanim.
Okay.
sure.
Yes, okay. New subject. The next subject talks about a woman who is pregnant and she feels a craving. And so too about a sick person. What is going to be the criteria to break the fast? A pregnant woman that got a craving and she feels like she has to eat, and it's called a sakana. The Chazal consider it a sakana if she doesn't eat. So she's allowed to eat until she gets revived again. It sounds like she was getting faint. So until she gets back to herself. Rashi says over here that the sakana might be for the uber, for the fetus, and also for the mother. I think even if it will be a sakana for the uber alone also, I think Rashi says someplace that also will be a reason to be mechalal and kippur. Rashi happens to say the mother also.
So, excuse me, you're being a dyke on the word nafsha. The nafsha doesn't mean the woman?
No, yes, but what is the concern? Is the concern that she's going to die or that the child is going to die? Rashi says both.
Okay, okay.
Here's Rashi.
And tashiv means what? That it should go back, meaning from being
until
distressed.
She gets revived, until she gets back to herself.
Okay.
She doesn't need both of them are in danger, and it might be that not that if she's in danger, surely, and even if the fetus alone is in danger, also I think that also we would also tell her to eat, but Rashi doesn't say that. So again, ubra sheiricha, if the pregnant woman had a craving to eat and she feels like she has to eat, the point here is that someone is in sakana nefashos. It's dangerous, so she's allowed to eat, and we give her to eat. She has to eat. A sick person, if there's a doctor around, so we give him to eat according to what the doctor says. The main shombakin, if there's nobody who's a doctor around, so even if the person says I need to eat, so you give him even if there's no doctor around until he says I had enough. She is talking about not about Yom Kippur. The Brayso is talking about other kinds of isurim, a korban, and she has a craving to eat the korban, and she's not allowed to. But now she's in sakana. So either kachim or b'sar chazir, mamish treifa, pork. So tochno kush berotiv, umunichon alpia, and nisash vaday temuta v'mla machil lenosa rotiv atzmo, and nisash vaday temuta v'mla machil lenosa shuman atzmo. So you're going to give her this. If she needs to eat it, she's going to eat it. The korban or the chazir, you give her, but you try to do as little as possible. So first you try it with just get a little taste of it. So a kush is kind of a spindle or kind of a knitting needle, let's say, and you just stick it in, and the residue that's on it, let her taste it, maybe that'll calm her down. If not, so then you give her the rotiv itself, the gravy itself. And this is a little bit less than giving her the actual meat. And if not, then you give her the meat itself, whatever she needs. But you go akal, you go slowly, and if it's able to satisfy her, that the craving just subside. Because there's nothing that stands before danger of life besides the big three Averis of the Zagir Rai Shvichas Damim. That's the end of our sugya. We can really stop here as far as Yom Kippur. That's the end of the sugya. That Yom Kippur or other Yisurim, Kachim, Hazir, that it's docha. That the Sakanas Nefashos is docha these Averis, and therefore you give her the food. But it does say you go akal, you go the easiest. Also doesn't say there's another point that even if she has to eat the meat, but to try to give less than a shear. That's what we do. And people have pizza, they do shiurim. They do less than the amount of a koseves or a lolugma. So that's the point that it says that everything's docha, the piguch nefesh is docha everything. But it does say that you do slowly either the residue of the rotiv or the rotiv itself or the meat itself. And also even at that it says less than the shear. And if she still needs, then you could even do the shear also. The rest of the Gemara today goes on to the subject that's a side subject.
Rebbe.
These three Averis. These three Averis. Yes, please.
Al pi bakim, the words al pi bakim, the poskim are mevarer that it could even be a miut as long as you have a baki that tells you, but it says who's a baki. A baki is who's famous because he has the most patience of other people and the most fame. But if you had a baki, al pi bakim, could use the miut.
That's going to be a sugya later of what's called Bakian. That's in tomorrow's daf. Here it says, the Mishnah said Bakian didn't go into it at all. The Gemara continues that these three things are docha sakanas nefashis. The big three are various. The person has to be most nefesh, avodah zarah, gila, right, shvichas dam. And now we're going into that. We're going on a bonus. It's a cruise now to talk about these three are various, not related to anything we spoke about. And the Gemara is going to say the sources for these three things. Avodah zarah, and how do you know that avodah zarah is docha sakanas nefashis? Yeah, a person has to give his life and not to do avodah zarah. The Tanya, it says in the pasuk, you should love Hashem with all of your life, with all of your heart, with all of your life, with all of your money. And the Gemara says, after his question, it says two things. It should have said the one which is the bigger chiddush. If you say Ba'odecha means the money, so say whichever one is more beloved to a person. Is the person's life more beloved to him? Is his money more beloved to him? So say the bigger one. So they say the bigger chiddush, and you know Kal V'chomer, the other one also. The answer is that different people. To a person whose body is more beloved to him than his money, so it says you have to love Hashem with your whole life. Some people, they love their money more than their life, so they should love Hashem with all their money. The obvious question is, what does it help to love Hashem? Why does it help to love your money more? If a person's going to die, he's not going to have his money either. Even if he really loves his money more than his life, but he doesn't have life, he doesn't have money either. That's everybody's obvious question. So there's a terrace over here that really is only the first half of the story. Is Rebbe Lezer. Rebbe Lezer says that it means gufo. It doesn't mean his life. It means yisurim. That some people, they would rather have a loss of money than to have physical suffering. And other people would have physical suffering than losing their money. That we do understand that's people either way. But according to this trial, it doesn't mean loss of life. It doesn't mean suffering. And our Gemara is talking about he has to even give his life. So the Bryce over there that continues that not only Beleza says, but Rabbi Akiva says, Afilu not las nafshecha. Rabbi Akiva learns that B'chol nafshecha means even your life. So some put it into the gears over here also that the proof is not from Rabbi Beleza. Rabbi Beleza holds that B'chol nafshecha means suffering. It doesn't mean physical suffering. It doesn't mean giving your life. But Rabbi Akiva is the one who says Afilu not las nafshecha, and he holds that B'chol nafshecha means even your life. So that's a Parashat Russia. That how do you know that a person has to give his life for not to do avodah zarah, because that's called loving Hashem. A person that loves Hashem, he doesn't do avodah zarah, he's not disloyal. So you should love Hashem with all your life. If you learn that b'chol nafshecha means over here also means your life, so that's the question. How can a person give his life because he loves his money?
His comedian Jack Benny was very cheap. That's what he played. He couldn't part with his money. A guy came over and he says, "Your money or your life?" And he says, "I'm thinking." And you have to think about it because he was so cheap.
There are people like that.
Even
though
it's a joke from 1949.
1949. Okay.
Yep, 1949.
Wow.
So it's not rational because he's not gonna have the money anyway.
Very White tells a story that it was a multi-millionaire that couldn't give tzedakah. Couldn't get give tzedakah. Finally, on his deathbed, he gets called Very One that I want to see. So he comes. Finally on his deathbed, he's going to give him a big check. So he gave him a check, and the Very One walked out right before he died. It was the same thing that he gave him every year, 108,000. He couldn't give it. He couldn't give more than that on his deathbed. He's dying. He knows that he's dying and he's going to go to Shemayim. He couldn't write more than 180. It's a sickness.
Wow. Okay. So that finishes about avodah zarah. That you know from the pasuk b'chol nafshecha that a person has to give his life in order not to do avodah zarah. Gilei rais v'shvichas damim and all the other two, that adultery and shvichas damim, murder. That he has to give his life in order not to commit a rais and in order not to kill somebody. How do you know? The Tanya. So the Gemara is going to go out of order now, and it's going to talk about gilei rais and not shvichas damim. We're going to have to wait till Lamed Beis to see how do you know that a person cannot kill somebody in order to save his own life. And we're taking that as a given now. We're taking that as a given that a person cannot kill in order to save his own life. And from there we're going to learn out that a rais also, a person cannot commit a rais in order to save his life. The Tanya, Rabbi Yomer. It says in the pasuk, over there it's talking about a person, a woman, who was raped against her will, and she was a married woman, Amurosa, but she's not held responsible because she was raped. It wasn't her fault. And the pasuk says that it's like somebody killed somebody. What the attacker did there was like somebody would have killed somebody. It wasn't her fault. But the pasuk says this mashal is not really so necessary in the pshat. What does that have to say that it's like somebody that somebody attacked? So he says it's like an attacker who came to murder. So too did this rapist come. Why does it have to say that for? So what is being learned? It seems like it's coming to teach, but really it's coming to learn that we're going to learn something from an Amurasa to a murderer. Man Amurasa. An Amurasa means a betrothed maiden, that she's married. Man Amurasa. You're allowed to save her if the woman is being attacked, being chased by someone who wants to have relations with rape her. So you're allowed to kill him. You're allowed to kill the attacker in order to save the victim. Afterwards, say, and Rashi brings a pasuk for that. How do we know that? The Gemara doesn't say. Rashi brings pasuk because it says, "Ein Moshe Allah." Here's the pasuk in Rashi in the bottom. Ein Moshe Allah. Okay, that's not but okay. That it says that she was attacked. No one was there to save her. So we can apply. If someone was there to save her, he should save her, even if he has to. So it's a pasuk says that you're allowed to save the woman by killing the attacker. So too, Rotzeach, if you could kill, you could save the victim. Someone wants to murder somebody, you're allowed to kill the murderer in order to save the victim. That's what we learned from this hekesh between an Amros and a Rotzeach. But now that also there's something the pasuk is going to say that we do learn from the Rotzeach to the Namurasa. But the pasuk says that this is like a Rotzeach. What do you learn about it? That the Ratzech, we know that a person, in order not to kill, is not allowed to kill in order to save himself. That we know. It's Harag Bal Yava. A person cannot kill in order to, he should be killed rather than to transgress the Aveira of killing. So too in Namarasa, Yahareg Bal Yava. A person should be killed rather than to transgress having relations with Namarasa. So the 2 points. The first point was to say that you're allowed to kill the Ratzech in order to save the victim. And the other point is to say that a person has to let himself killed in order not to do that, not to rape, and Ratzech is a given. That we know that a person is not allowed to kill somebody in order to save himself. And nothing more, and that we learn that from the Gemara also. Now the Gemara asks, how do you know that? That's the next stop on the Gemara. How do you know that? Next page over here.
That was the end of the brisa there at the bottom of the page.
What is that?
That was the end of the brisa at the bottom of the page.
Yes. And on the next page is saying, how do you know that? Why is that a given? How do you know that a Ratzech is not allowed to, you're not allowed to kill in order to save your life? That's reasoning we figure out on ourselves. Someone came to Rabba and he said, Amali Mariduroy, the owner of my village, said, the place where I live, the owner of my kfar, Katle Leplania, Vilo Kartilna Lachs. Kill so and so. If not, I'm going to kill you. So he came to the Rav to ask, what should I do? You should let yourself be killed and you should not kill. Who says that your blood is redder? Maybe his blood is redder. So that's as far alone. The Gemara seems to say that we don't know whose blood is red. What does it mean blood is red? Who's more chashiv? Who's more chashiv in the eyes of Hashem? How do you know that you're worth more than him? Maybe he's worth more than you. That's the end of the Gemara. The Gemara continues now something about Yom Kippur, but as far as those three Averos, that's the end of the sugya. That Avodah Zarah Gilarai Shvichas Dam Mizarg Bal Yava. Avodah Zarah because it says B'chol Nafshecha. Ratzech is a svara because who do you know who's more chashuv? And Namarasa is a drasha that the pasuk compares the Ratzech to Namarasa. Namarasa also is Yarg Bal Yava. Rashi points out that it says Yeharg Bal Yava by the Namarasa by Rice. It says that in the masculine, Yehareg Bal Yavor. It doesn't say Tehareg Bal Tavor. Rashi says that a woman doesn't have to be most nefesh in order not to transgress arayos because she's passive. In the relation act, she's passive. She's not active. If she'd be active, it'd be the same thing. But if she's not active, she's just passive. So then there's no Yehareg Bal Yavor on the passive transgression. So she doesn't have to be most nefesh. If she's being raped, she doesn't have to kill herself in order to save or let herself be killed in order not to do the avera because she's doing a passive act. That's why he says Yehareg Bal Yavor. As far as this Gemara that says that you don't know whose blood is redder, the Gemara seems to say, the word seems to say, you don't know who's more chashuv. You don't know who's more chashuv. Rashi says a little bit different. I don't know how Rashi fits into the Gemara. But Rashi says that the only reason why the Torah says that you're allowed to transgress an avera is in order to save a life. But here, anyway, a life is going to go. You don't know. All Jews are the same. And Rashi doesn't make we know who's more chashuv. Nobody's more chashuv. We don't know who. And usually you're allowed to transgress an Avera to save a life. But here anyway, a life is going to go. So why do an Avera? The Gemara seems to say a little bit different. The Gemara seems to say you don't know whose blood is red, who's more chashuv. There's just one more point to say that there is a halacha in the end of Horius. It has a Mishnah that if you could save one person, two people are drowning, you could, whatever, two people are on sakana, you could save one of them. So there is an order over there. Over there we do say no difference, save somebody. Over there there's an order. It talks about the Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, whatever. A Talmud Chacham goes before all. That means we're not saying whose blood is red. We don't know. And we don't know who's. But as far as we do know, the givens is I'm not doing an avera. I'm going to save somebody. I only can save one. So over there is a say there of who is more chashuv. Who is more chashuv as far as we know, at least he has this mile, at least this quality he has. But here that you can do an avera, so then we don't say that a Kohen goes before Levi, a Levi goes before Yisrael. Over here we don't know. So you're not allowed to kill anybody.
If it's a mother and a father, is it in order? Which one, the mother and the father, you say?
I think it says that a man before a woman. And in general, a man before a woman. It doesn't say about a father and a mother. If there's men, like by the Titanic, they saved the women.
Right.
But halachically, they should have saved the men.
Really?
That if there's only enough to save the man or woman, so the man first. We're not saying, like Agamar says, you don't know whose blood is better. But as far as saving somebody, that's the Sukkot Hori is that there is a saving. But as far as killing, then no such thing.
Children don't go before adults.
No. And another point, just interesting, that if you have, as far as Agamar goes, that you can't kill in order to save oneself, even you'll say that the most chashuv, the top Gadol Hador, and the least, whatever you'll call it, the town drunk. You don't say that you're not allowed to kill the town drunk in order to save the Gadol. As far as saving, if you only can save one, who do you save? But as far as killing somebody, you're not allowed to kill anybody. The Gemara continues. Back to the subject about Yom Kippur.
Where's Corn in Horius for this union of Hakdamas in Hatzalah?
I'm pretty sure the last Mishnah is. I think it's the last Mishnah is of Horius. If I'm wrong, it's one of those Masechtas. I'm pretty sure it's the last thing in Horius. He Ubra the Archa. There was a pregnant woman that had a craving. Asla Kamei the Rebbe on Yom Kippur, and she had a craving to eat something. Came to Rebbe. Amalahu Zilu Lechushula the Yom Kippur. Whisper to her that it's Yom Kippur. Maybe she'll calm down. Maybe something spiritual that she'll calm down. The fact that it's Yom Kippur, of course, she knew that's Yom Kippur, but we whispered to her that it's Yom Kippur. Maybe something will take effect. They did, and she accepted the word, and she calmed down. The craving went down, subsided. So he said about him, the child. The Rebbe said about the child that the pasuk that says by Yirmiyah it says that Hashem said, before I created you in the womb, I know you. I mean, I know you from the womb already. So that means that the child who was craving subsided. We look at it as if the child is the one who's having the craving. So if he was heard that from Kippur and he calmed down, so that means that he's a holy man. He's going to be a holy man. What happened? That child was a Yochanan. But Yochanan, when he was in his mother's womb, the mother had a craving or whatever. He had a craving, and then we heard that's from Kippur, so it subsided, and the Gemara praises him. Another story. Dacha, she also had a craving. Same thing. Amalahu. Lechushula. Also the same thing. Tell her the whisper that's from Kippur, but the low chisha. She didn't get impressed from it. She still needed food. A few more words. Zoru Rishayim Mevachim. That the Risham, the wicked, are estranged from the womb. That even in the womb already, the wicked are already, you could tell that it's wicked. And who was over there? They waited after the baby grew up. It was a Russia. So it doesn't sound like a big Russia, but that's also called a Russia. Atzaperi. Atzaperi means that he stored up the produce in order to manipulate the market. That when he, whatever it was, wheat, whatever it was, it says you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to store it up in order to wait until there's a big demand, supply and demand, small supply, big demand, and then the price goes up. You're not allowed to do that. And he used to do that. He used to take, in the season, he used to get a lot of the produce and store it up and wait until he could make a lot of money on it, and the market prices went up. So that was, when he was a baby, that was the point that he didn't get calmed down. So there was a nicker already that that's the road that he's going on. Okay, that's today's Gemara. That's good, everybody. So have a good Shabbos, and Bezras Hashem, Motzei Shabbos, 9:30. I hope I'll be on time. If not, I'll try to get a message to somebody if I have to be a little bit later. I'll try to be here by 9:30. Yes, everybody. Thank you.
You usually come late.
Thank you.
Keep David Tom, no? Okay, so where's, Gotti, I would like